What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video. In this one, we'll be analyzing a crash that happened in 2012, I believe. It was 28th of February. Su-30MK2 crashed about 140 kilometers north of the city Komsomolska-na-Amure, which is where they produce some Sukhoi jets. The story behind this one, it is an acceptance flight for an aircraft that's just rolled off the factory floor. It was destined for Vietnam, and they're doing a high-speed run. And I'm going to talk you through a little bit as to what happens here. I've annotated everything, the footage as usual. And as always, FPS are not the best because they've got their mirrors up. So we just need to bear with it. Obviously, this is just what we have in the public domain. It is very interesting. They're doing a high-speed, top-speed run as part of the test flight, and at one point the engine catches fire, and I could tell you why that's happened, or at least as to why we're told it's happened. For every report that I've ever read, that seems to be the cause. Now, first of all, Su-30MK2, not the Su-30 that a lot of you will be thinking of. This is not the thrust vectoring Su-30 that the Indians fly, the MKI and its derivatives like the MKM, the Russian Su-30SM. This is actually a slightly older aircraft in terms of its design. It doesn't have any front canards, it doesn't have any thrust vectoring, and it's not quite as advanced in terms of its systems, but it is a little bit lighter. And it is an aircraft that was originally designed for the Chinese Air Force, the Republic Peoples of China Air Force. And then there were some derivatives that went to various different countries, including Indonesia and Vietnam. You can tell them apart very easily because they've got these very long fins, unusually long for Sukhoi jets, which are usually sort of slanted and cut off at the top. These ones don't, they're kind of straight. The Russian Air Force also flies Su-30M2s, which are similar to this, MK2 or MK2V for Vietnam, if you will. The reason the aircraft has crashed and has gone out of control, and the pilots did eject here, during that high-speed run, apparently the light which extends for air-to-air refueling, to see the air-to-air refueling probe essentially at nighttime, for whatever reason it opened, and I guess the force of the oncoming air, because they're above Mach 1 here when this happens, it rips it off and it hits the right engine intake. The right engine goes on fire, and very shortly the flight control system fails. The aircraft goes into sort of an uncontrollable state. The pilots are sort of with it for a little bit, and then eventually they eject. So let's have a look at it and analyze it and kind of go through it and see what's actually going on.
We have 2 good engine starts. You're clear to disconnect the headset. We'll see you on the left with the pin. Thanks a lot.
Alright, so they're doing the high-speed run. You'll see the speed in the top left-hand corner of the screen now, passing 490 kilometers an hour. ISA conditions, this is 3,300 meters, which you can see in the top right-hand side. It's about 10,000 feet. ISA conditions, speed of sound here, about -7 degrees Celsius, give it about 1,170 odd kilometers an hour. A little bit colder on the ground by the looks of it, looking like there's a bit of snow, so maybe a little bit slower, so maybe about 1,160 or so, which is what they're passing now. So they're supersonic, and at this point everything's normal. It's a bit strange why Rita gave out a warning there, especially for maximum G, because the airplane's not pulling any G. This part, I don't know, because at this point everything seems to be normal, so if that's related to the problems they're going to have very shortly, don't know. Alright, so what happened there is, I believe the light for the air-to-air refueling probe has extended, got ripped off, hit the engine, and has caused a catastrophic engine failure on the right engine. Now, the reason I think it's banking so much now is because you've all of a sudden got a huge amount of drag on one of the engines. They've probably still got full beans, full burner on the left engine. And because the Su-30 has some distance between the nozzles, unlike the Western jets, there's definitely going to be some amount of asymmetric thrust. So it's probably very unexpected, you know, just probably ripped the control stick almost out of their hands at this point, considering the force with which it has happened. So they're probably trying to get it under control now and, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So hard right turn now, flight control system failure. So at this point I said inaudible for the ground controller what he said, but I think I am fairly certain what he said is 452, i.e. the call sign of the aircraft, failure, ? Because he sees that something is going wrong, probably from his telemetry on the ground, I'm not sure, but he's obviously aware that something has gone wrong, so he's asking them, what is the problem?
Скорость предельная. Сбрось обороты левого двигателя. Сбрось обороты правого двигателя. 452. Гидросистемы. Проверь давление по индикатору. Откат автоматики. Падаем! Откат автоматики правого. Катапультируем. 452. Катапультируйте. Панели вручную. Готов. Не превышай мах. Тяни, блядь! Тормозной борт 2.
So at this point, they've pulled the handle and they've ejected, gone out of there. The airplane is actually in a very unusual state. It's sort of almost inverted. So they've actually kind of ejected in towards the ground, although they are quite high here. They're still about 10,000 feet, so there's no issues there. But very, very unusual kind of situation to be in as a pilot. You are sort of out of control, what looks like a spiral dive, I think. And it's one of the most horrendous, horrible feelings. If you've ever done an inverted spin or inverted spiral dive, God, it is just, it's awful. It is awful. I like aerobatics, but bloody hell, this is terrible. And on top of that, they're out of control, and they've got all these warnings. The Rita screaming at them for all sorts of failures, wants them to reduce RPM on left engine, right engine, fire extinguishers, right engine fire, flight control systems failure. I mean, everything's going off at once here, and crazy situation to be in. Now, the official report, I think, or the reports that you can find online have said that it was ground control that it, told them to eject. Looking at the HUD tape, I don't think that's actually what happened. I believe the ground controller said, "Are you ejecting?" ? And not like eject as in, an order. Which in Russian, you could use the same word. It just depends on the intonation that, where you put the emphasis. It could be misinterpreted slightly. So I don't think so, because the ground controller, I don't think he had any idea about actually as to what is going on. He might have seen some telemetry stuff going completely berserk, but it's completely impossible for him to know the exact state of the airplane. Is it controllable? Is it not controllable? So I think the pilots have just made that decision on their own. And also, if you guys are confused about as to why the ground controller would be telling them to eject, it's because, just like with the Su-35 video that I did recently, it's not actually because the ground controller is like your normal ground controller giving you vectors, etc. This guy it's a flight control center for test flights, and I believe he would be qualified as a pilot, or used to be a pilot before, and he would have a team of engineers sitting next to him almost certainly for these test flights, just in case something goes wrong. So that's why these ground controllers are actually very much involved in the whole operation, the whole test flight. It's kind of like the Apollo guy speaking to Houston Control. Sort of similar idea. So anyway, at this point, the aircraft continues in what seems to be kind of an inverted spin, and just continues off towards the ground. So you see the speed now dropping off very shortly down to right about 0, 40 meters a second. So he's falling at a rate of about 8,000 to 9,000 feet per minute. Yeah, lots of failures going on here. And there you go, speed is 0. Unfortunately, there is no footage of the aircraft actually, smashing into the ground. But I believe it crashed somewhere in a remote area. Nobody was hurt on the ground. The pilots ejected safely, although one of them suffered from broken ribs. I don't know the story that, how these guys progressed on with their career, but, thank God they survived. And if there's anything that we can take away from this video is, being a test pilot is a bloody dangerous job. I mean, crazy situation to be in. And I think we really do own it to test pilots. It doesn't matter, Russian, Western, whatever, makes no difference. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I mean, aviation could never advance, and the job that they do is bloody dangerous. But anyway, if you guys haven't seen my Su-35 video with a crazy flight control systems failure where the pilot does a sensational job of taming the beast, shall we say, and making an emergency landing, a crazy landing of basically what could be considered as an uncontrollable airplane. He does it in a very interesting way. If you haven't seen that one, please make sure to check that one out. I'll put the link in the top right-hand corner of the screen. But for now, I think that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this little analysis. If you have, please make sure to smash the living daylight out of the like button, subscribe for future videos, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.